Hello, fellow students. Did you know that there are over 562 different federally recognized Native American tribes? While the majority of them reside in Alaska, the rest of them are spread among 33 states all across the U.S. and are widely diverse. Although the lives of Native Americans is taught in most public schools, it's usually only when they're mentioned in times of war. So there is much about their lives and culture that is often overlooked and underappreciated. It's often difficult to learn about Native Americans and the many aspects of their lives because all of their history is transmitted orally from one generation to the next, and because there is so much variance from tribe to tribe. For the remainder of my time with you, I'll be discussing some of the most famous chiefs, the day-to-day living, and the cultural traditions and religious beliefs of the Apache, Lakota, and Sioux tribes that have all been prominent throughout American history. One of the most famous Native American tribes is the Apache. The Apache is known for having the fiercest warriors and has probably one of the most well-known, Geronimo. He was also the most well-known Apache chief and was known for his combat skills and daring escapes at several battles, and was considered one of the Apache's fiercest chiefs and warriors. The Apache had what is considered a very traditional living arrangement. Men participated in hunting and raid activities. For centuries, they were fierce warriors adept in wilderness survival and carried out raids on those who trespassed on their territory. While women gathered food, wood, and water, their homes were made of shelters of brush called wickiups and were easily constructed by women and were well adapted to their arid environment and constant shifting of location. In traditional Apache culture, each section of the tribe was made up of extended families with a headman chosen for leadership abilities and exploits in war. Polygamy was practiced when economic circumstances permitted, and marriage could be easily terminated by either party. Religion was also a fundamental part of Apache life. Their two supernatural beings included Usen, the giver of life, and the mountain spirits, which were represented in religious rites such as healing and adulthood ceremonies. Men dressed elaborately to impersonate the mountain spirits during rituals. The Apache were a fierce and very battle-oriented tribe, but were also cultural and very spiritual people. One of the lesser-known tribes are the Lakota of the Midwest, who consisted of 7 tribes who were known as incredible warriors and buffalo hunters. They ate mostly small game, deer, buffalo, and wild rice. The Lakota were located in Minnesota when Europeans began to explore and settle in the 1600s. After conflict with their enemies, they moved west, once acquiring horses, and flourished hunting buffalo on the high plains of the Midwest. Although the Lakota is one of the less heard about tribes, they were once led by perhaps the best-known chief in early American history. Chief Sitting Bull is known as the chief who defeated General Custer in 1876 at the Battle of Bighorn, where Custer disobeyed direct orders to hold back on the attack and led his 700 men forwards to battle so that he may claim victory for himself. However, Sitting Bull and Native Americans from several tribes who had set aside their differences and come together to counter the attack. Custer and his troops were completely annihilated, with only a single horse surviving the battle. Though they may have started small and probably widely unheard of, they have expanded largely in numbers as the years have passed, and are numbered today at about 70,000, of which 1/3 still speak the ancestral language. Lastly, the Sioux of the Western Plains, led by Chief American Horse, who was chief during the Lakota Wars of 1860s and 70s. He was later captured and killed after the historic Battle of Little Bighorn. The Sioux are a confederacy of several tribes that speak many different dialects. The name Sioux comes from the Chippewa word Nadawesu, which means snake or enemy. They were masters of the North American plains and prairies, feared by other tribes all the way from the Great Lakes to the Rockies. Migrating west from Minnesota, the Sioux became nomads of the plains, taking advantage of the horses which they had recently acquired. They followed the buffalo, which were their main source of food, as well as clothes and other shelter. They lived in teepees because they were small and light and could be both packed up for moving and assembled quickly to set up camp. Though the Sioux were known as great warriors, the family was considered the center of Sioux life. Children were called Wakanisha, which meant sacred and were the center of attention. While monogamy was most often practiced, men were allowed to take on more than one wife, although in some cases it was punished by disfigurement, so it was hard to tell where they stood on that, really. The roles of men and women were clearly defined, with men expected to provide and defend the family, while women ruled the family and domestic lives of the tribe. They were also a very spiritual people, believing in a monotheistic religion where they referred to Wankan Taka, meaning great mystery, as a powerful spiritual being. Rituals of self-sacrifice by inflicting slashes upon themselves or other inflicted wounds asserted their identities as warriors. This was also practiced by mourners during burial ceremonies. So while the Sioux were known for being formidable warriors, they were also greatly family-oriented people and were very spiritual. To conclude, Native Americans have a rich and vibrant culture that is often overlooked, being mostly mentioned in times of wars with the early settlers and often simply seen as the enemies of the settlers. While they do have very many interesting battles with settlers and rivaling tribes, they also have many different ways of living, spiritual beliefs, and amazing histories that vary greatly from tribe to tribe. Thank you.